I was 17 the first time my parents looked at me like I was a criminal. Not disappointed. Not angry. Just cold. Like I was some stranger who had broken into their home and violated their trust. And all it took was one lie from my sister to flip the switch. My name's Daniel. I'm 27 now, but what I'm about to tell you started a decade ago. Back when I still thought family meant something. Back when I was still naive enough to believe blood was thicker than water. Back when I still trusted my parents. We lived in a modest, two-story home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. One of those places where nothing big ever happened, where people waved at you from their driveways and gossiped at backyard barbecues. My dad, Richard, was a factory foreman. My mom, Lorraine, worked part-time at the library. And then there was my older sister, Rachel, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She was 19 then, already in community college, already being praised for her ambition and independence. And me? I was just Daniel. Quiet, studious, stayed out of trouble, helped around the house, got decent grades. But I was always compared to her. Always just a step behind in their eyes. Still, we were close once. Rachel used to walk me home from school when I was younger, ruffle my hair when I was sad, sneak me snacks when mom said no. But something shifted as we got older. Maybe it was the way our parents doted on her, praised her every mediocre achievement while glossing over mine. Maybe it was the way she seemed to enjoy the power she held, the way our parents always believed her first. Maybe it was just who she was underneath it all, and I was too young to see it. The first real crack appeared on a rainy Tuesday in September. I came home from school drenched and tired, dropped my backpack by the door, and kicked off my soggy sneakers. My parents were in the kitchen, both of them quiet. Too quiet. Rachel was sitting at the table, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. She looked up at me and gave me this look. Not angry, not scared. Just smug. Like she was waiting for a show to start. "Daniel," my mom said, not looking up from her mug. "We need to talk." That phrase. The classic harbinger of doom. "Okay," I said cautiously, my eyes darting between them. "What's going on?" My dad stood, walked over to the counter, and held something up. It was a small envelope. White. Torn at the top, my name scribbled on the front in blue ink. "I found this hidden in the laundry hamper," he said. "It's from my desk drawer. It had $300 in it." My stomach sank. "What? I've never seen that before." Rachel stood now too. "I told you," she said, voice calm and composed, like a practiced witness. "I saw him sneaking around the office last night. I didn't want to believe it, but I wasn't in your office," I said, heat rising to my face. "Why would I even take your money?" Mom finally looked up, her eyes heavy with disappointment. "We're not stupid, Daniel. You're the only one who would have known where Richard keeps his spare cash." "But I didn't." "Just admit it," Rachel interrupted, folding her arms tighter. "It's pathetic that you're lying. You've always been jealous of me. Maybe this was your way of getting even." That word, jealous, hit me like a slap. Jealous? Of what? Of her constant manipulation? Of the way she twisted every situation to her advantage and got away with it? "I didn't do it," I said again, this time quieter. Not because I doubted myself, but because I realized, in that moment, that it didn't matter what I said. The decision had already been made. That night, my parents didn't sit with me at dinner. Rachel smirked at me across the table while Mom and Dad ate in stony silence. My plate stayed untouched. By the end of the week, my dad had changed the locks on his office. My mom took away my laptop and said I couldn't be trusted. I wasn't grounded exactly. No one used that word, but the message was clear. I had broken their trust. I was no longer their son. I was a liability. Rachel, on the other hand, was showered with praise. "Thank you for being honest." It took courage to speak up. "You're such a good example for Daniel." I started spending more time at the library after school, claiming I had group projects just to stay out of the house. I knew I was walking on eggshells. I stopped asking for rides. I stopped speaking unless spoken to. I learned to make myself small. A month passed, then two. Eventually, the $300 incident faded from daily conversation, but the tension never did. The air in the house remained thick, quiet, and cold. I began to notice things, missing pieces of jewelry, checks that took longer to clear, Rachel suddenly buying new clothes and gadgets, despite claiming she was broke. But I knew better than to say anything. I'd already lost the benefit of the doubt. Until the night it happened again. I was in my room, half asleep, when I heard the raised voices downstairs. My mom's voice was shrill, panicked. My dad's was booming, accusatory. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. It was right there, my dad was yelling. The emergency envelope. I checked it last week. It had nearly $2,000. Rachel's voice was muffled, but I caught enough. I don't know what you're talking about. Why would I take it? Then Mom, we need to call the police. This is getting out of hand. I froze. Were they going to accuse me again? I patted down the hallway and leaned over the railing. Everything okay? 3 heads turned toward me, and I immediately wished I'd stayed silent. Rachel's face was red, her cheeks flushed, her eyes glassy. Dad took 1 step forward. Don't play dumb, Daniel. You're not going to gaslight us again. Not this time. And there it was. Again. No evidence. No questions. Just blame. I should have stayed quiet. But something in me snapped. I didn't even know you had $2,000 stashed in the house, I said. And if I was going to steal from you, don't you think I'd at least try to make it look like someone else? Or not use the exact same method as last time? Rachel shot me a glare so sharp it could cut steel. Enough, Mom said. Just go to your room, Daniel. And I did. Because arguing was pointless. Because my words didn't matter. That night, I cried for the first time in years. Not because I was scared. Not even because I was angry. But because I realized that no matter what I did, I would always be the villain in their eyes. The scapegoat. The disappointment. I started to mentally count down the days until I turned 18. I had some money saved from tutoring jobs and odd gigs. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get a shared apartment and a used car. I just had to survive a few more months in that house. I didn't speak to Rachel again unless I had to. She kept her distance too, probably satisfied that she'd once again gotten away with whatever stunt she'd pulled. My parents didn't notice the tension. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. But then, 1 week before my 18th birthday, something happened that shifted everything. Not publicly, not yet, but inside me. I came home late from work to find Rachel sitting in the driveway in her beat-up car, frantically texting on her phone. I almost walked past her without saying a word, but she rolled down the window. Hey, she said, her voice different, less smug, more desperate. Can you lend me $50? Just until Friday. I stared at her, my expression blank. You want me to give you money? After everything. She blinked. Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. It's just 50. I said nothing. She huffed. You still mad about that stupid money thing? You seriously need to grow up, Daniel. I leaned in a little, lowered my voice. Did you take the money from Dad's drawer? And the emergency envelope? She paused. For half a second, her eyes flicked away, and then she scoffed. Please. You think I'd be dumb enough to leave a trail? She didn't even deny it. Not really. I stood there, frozen, the night air suddenly colder. That was the moment I decided I was done being quiet. Done playing the scapegoat. I didn't know how or when. But I knew one day, I'd make sure the truth came out. And when it did, I wouldn't just get an apology. I'd get justice. And that justice would begin the moment they needed me most. I didn't say anything to Rachel that night. I just turned and walked into the house, quietly closed the door behind me, and sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, replaying her words in my head. You think I'd be dumb enough to leave a trail? Not a confession. Not quite. But it was close enough. And more than anything, it confirmed what I had been suspecting for years. She was behind the missing money. She'd been manipulating our parents, lying through her teeth, and somehow turning it all on me. And worse, they believed her. Every single time. Over the next week, I began packing what little I owned. Not in boxes, that would have drawn attention. Just little by little. Clothes stuffed into a duffel bag. My notebooks and tutoring materials neatly arranged in my backpack. The few personal keepsakes I had were tucked into the lining of my jacket. My plan was simple. Turn 18, take the job I'd been offered at a computer repair shop downtown, and move into the room a friend's cousin had available for rent. I didn't expect a goodbye. I didn't want one. My birthday came and went with almost no acknowledgement. Rachel gave me a half-hearted happy birthday at breakfast without looking up from her phone. My mom asked if I wanted leftover lasagna from 2 nights ago. Dad didn't even speak to me that morning. No cake. No card. No family dinner. Just silence, like I'd already stopped existing in their eyes. Fine by me. That afternoon, while they were both out running errands, I grabbed my things and walked out the front door without a word. The moment I stepped off the porch, I felt lighter. Like I could breathe for the first time in months. Maybe years. Life on my own was rough at first. The room I rented was barely big enough for a mattress and a fold-up desk. The walls were thin, the water pressure weak, and the rent ate up more than half my paycheck. But it was mine. No judgment, no accusations, just quiet, blessed freedom. I didn't speak to my family for nearly 3 years after that. Not because I was being petty, okay, maybe a little, but mostly because I needed space to become someone else. Someone who wasn't defined by their disappointment. During that time, I worked my way up from repairing cracked laptop screens and removing malware to actually building custom systems and managing the store's small team. I started taking community college courses in the evenings, mostly IT certifications, and even picked up freelance work on the side. My boss liked me. My clients trusted me. And for the first time in my life, I trusted me. But then, out of nowhere, came the message that dragged me back into their orbit. It was a Tuesday night. I had just finished helping a small business owner recover a nearly corrupted hard drive, and I was walking home, feeling pretty good about myself, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hi, Daniel. It's Mom. I know it's been a while, but we really need to talk. Please call me. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, rereading the message over and over. My heart started racing, not with excitement, but with something darker. Dread. Confusion. A flicker of hope I tried to immediately squash. I didn't reply. A few days later, another message came in, this time from Rachel. Hey, I think Mom and Dad want to apologize. They're going through some stuff. Just talk to them. It's been long enough. The nerve. Apologize? After 3 years of radio silence? After letting me walk out of their lives without a second thought? And only now they wanted to talk? I ignored it again. But the messages kept coming. From my mom, my dad, finally. Even a couple of family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Something was clearly going on. And eventually, my curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to meet them for coffee. Neutral ground. Public place. No chance of a screaming match. When I walked into the cafe, they were already sitting at a corner table. Mom with her hands clasped tightly in front of her, Dad staring into his untouched coffee, and Rachel nowhere in sight. I almost turned around and left right then. Daniel, Mom said, standing quickly. You look good. Thanks, I said cautiously, sitting down across from them. There was a long, awkward pause. Then Dad cleared his throat. We owe you an apology. I raised an eyebrow. That's new. He winced. We were wrong. About a lot of things. Mom jumped in. Rachel, she's not the person we thought she was. And just like that, it all came spilling out. Turns out, Rachel had been stealing from them for years. Not just the envelope incidents, but bigger things too. She'd taken credit cards out in their names, racked up debt, pawned family heirlooms, lied about tuition payments, and spent the money on trips with her boyfriend. It all came to light when the bank called about a foreclosure warning they'd never seen coming. She told us you did it, Mom said quietly, tears in her eyes. And we believed her. I don't know why. I guess we didn't want to see the truth. I sat there listening. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to cry. But most of me just felt empty. Like I'd waited years for this moment, and it somehow meant nothing now. We're sorry, Dad said again. We were fools. I looked at them. Really looked at them. They looked older, more tired. Worn down. What do you want from me? I asked finally. They exchanged a glance. We need help, Mom said. Financially. Of course. And there it was. The real reason they reached out. Not because they missed me. Not because they wanted to rebuild the relationship. But because they were broke, desperate, and I, the son they cast out, was now their best chance. I didn't answer right away. I told them I needed time to think. And I walked out. That night, I dug through my cloud backups and pulled out the old voice memo app one used to use on my cracked iPod Touch. I remembered recording a few things back in the day, back when I felt like I needed proof of my side of the story. Just in case. And sure enough, there it was. A scratchy, low-quality recording from my room. Rachel's voice, as clear as day. You seriously think I'd be dumb enough to leave a trail? Please. If they want to keep handing me money and blaming you, that's their problem. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I tried to warn them. Subtly. Carefully. Years ago, I'd left a note in Dad's desk drawer with suspicions about Rachel's spending habits, after the second time I got blamed. I'd even emailed Mom once anonymously with screenshots of Rachel's public Venmo transactions showing expensive brunches and shopping trips. They never listened. But I kept the receipts. All of them. And now they were begging me for help. I smiled for the first time that day, because I finally had something they couldn't ignore. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was stressed, far from it, but because I couldn't stop replaying every single moment from the last decade. Every lie, every sideways glance, every time I came home to cold stares and slammed doors. Every instance where I second-guessed myself and wondered if I was the problem. And now, the same people who once looked at me like I was something they scraped off their shoe were sitting in a cafe begging me for help. The irony was almost poetic. I stared at the dusty old iPod Touch resting on my nightstand. That single recording, it wasn't enough to burn everything down, but it was something. It was proof. Not for them. They already knew the truth now. But for me, it proved I hadn't imagined it. That I wasn't crazy. That the years of exile and silent treatment weren't the result of a misunderstanding. It was all real, and I had survived it. But I wasn't interested in revenge. Not yet. First, I had to rebuild what they tried to destroy. After our reunion, I ignored their follow-up texts. They sent a few more messages over the next week. Long, desperate paragraphs about their financial situation, how they were at risk of losing the house, how Rachel had run off after being confronted. No apologies anymore, just subtle guilt trips laced between pleas for help. But I had my own life to worry about. The truth was, even though I'd found a semblance of stability since leaving, I wasn't exactly thriving. I was still in that tiny room, still juggling work and classes, still eating too many instant noodles and skipping dentist appointments. I was proud of how far I'd come, but it wasn't enough. Not for what I wanted, not for what I deserved. So I made a decision. No more just surviving. It was time to build. I started with my job at the computer repair shop. My boss, Brian, had always liked me, said I had a good head for problem solving and didn't panic under pressure. He also mentioned, more than once, that he was looking to expand. One evening, after closing up, I stayed behind and pitched him a plan. Let me take on the mobile clients, I said. Small businesses, home calls, on-site support. You don't have the time, and I've already built a good rapport with half the people who walk in here. Brian leaned back in his chair, skeptical. You want to go freelance? No, I said. I want to start something under your brand. A branch. I get a cut, you get the expansion. Low risk for you, and I do the legwork. He rubbed his chin for a long time before nodding. You put together a plan, and we'll talk. That weekend, I skipped my usual downtime and built a proposal. Pricing tiers, marketing strategies, service outlines, the works. I even built a basic website and designed a logo using a free trial on a design site. Brian was impressed. Within a month, I was taking calls directly, setting appointments, walking into offices and homes wearing a navy blue polo with our logo embroidered on it. I bought a used hatchback, organized a mobile toolkit, and spent evenings polishing up the website and writing blog posts for SEO. The work was exhausting, but it was mine. And slowly, the money started coming in. Not a flood, but enough to start saving. I moved out of the cramped room and into a small studio apartment. Nothing fancy, but it had a real kitchen and a balcony that caught the afternoon sun. I bought a second-hand couch, a real desk, and even a tiny espresso machine. Small luxuries that felt like monuments. Around the same time, I finished my certifications and started bidding on larger freelance contracts. Network setups, server management for local shops, cybersecurity audits for clinics and law firms. I was always honest about being a solo operator, and people respected the hustle. Still, I kept to myself. No social media, no family updates, no old friends, just the grind. And then, one day, I got a message I wasn't expecting. From Rachel. It was short. Too short. I know you hate me. I don't blame you. But I need your help. I stared at the screen for a while. Part of me wanted to delete it. Another part wanted to reply with a string of insults I'd been mentally drafting since I was 17. But instead, I did nothing. I left her on read. Over the next few days, I got more messages from unfamiliar numbers. Clearly burner phones. All variations of the same theme. Please talk to me. I'm sorry. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I'm in a bad place. I have nowhere to go. I didn't respond. Until one message stood out. Mom and Dad told me you have money now. That you're doing well. I'm happy for you. Just remember who looked out for you when we were kids. You don't have to shut me out forever. I almost laughed. Looked out for me? That was rich coming from the girl who ruined my reputation and stole from our parents while framing me. But it was that last sentence that stuck with me. You don't have to shut me out forever. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't remorse. It was entitlement. As if she deserved forgiveness simply because she existed in my past. That was when I knew I hadn't hit rock bottom when I moved out. That moment was rock bottom, when I realized how deep the damage went. When I realized that no matter what I did, these people would always try to crawl back in through the cracks if I left them open. So I sealed them shut. I blocked her number. I changed my email. I added call filters to my phone. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it for peace. Months passed. The business grew. Brian officially made me a partner. We rebranded the company together and opened a second location. I hired my first employee, a kid named Felix who reminded me of myself at 17. Smart, quiet, and desperate for someone to believe in him. Life felt good. Not just stable good. And still, I didn't talk to my parents. Until one afternoon, I came home to find an envelope taped to my apartment door. No name, no address, just my first name scrawled in familiar handwriting. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a letter, handwritten, from my mother. She wrote about how hard things had become, how they'd sold the house, how they were living in a rental apartment now, barely able to afford groceries, how Dad had lost his job, how Rachel had disappeared again after borrowing money from one of their remaining friends, how she sometimes woke up and wished she could go back in time. And then, tucked at the bottom, was the kicker. We're sorry, Daniel. We know we failed you. But please, if there's any way you can help us, even just a loan, we'd be forever grateful. We're not proud of asking, but we're desperate. We don't know who else to turn to. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't manipulation. It was pure, raw desperation. And for a moment, I felt something stir in me. Not pity, but an old ache. The part of me that used to crave their approval, that had once looked at them like pillars, that had once just wanted to go home. But I couldn't go home, because there was never really a home to begin with. Still, I didn't throw the letter away. I placed it on my desk, sat with it, thought about it, and then I opened a drawer and pulled out the old iPod Touch again, the one with Rachel's voice. And I thought about all the times I tried to warn them, all the subtle signs they ignored, the truth they refused to see. And I remembered the email I had sent Mom all those years ago, the one she never replied to. So I did something I hadn't done in 10 years. I printed that email. I printed the screenshots I had taken. I transferred the audio file to my laptop and had it transcribed. I stapled everything together, wrote a short note that said, I tried. You just didn't want to hear it. And I mailed it to their address. No return label. No contact info. Just silence. I don't know what they did with it. But I do know that a week later, I got one last text from an unknown number before changing my number entirely. It simply said, I didn't know. And I never replied. For a long time after that final message, I didn't know. Things were quiet. No more letters on my door. No more desperate voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. No more shadows from the past creeping in through the blinds. But quiet doesn't mean peaceful. Because peace, for me, would have been closure. And there's no such thing as closure when the people who broke you are still out there, still breathing, still trying to spin the story in their favor, still painting you as cold, distant, ungrateful. I hadn't just walked away. I had won without ever having to say a word. And I knew that must have driven them crazy. That should have been enough. It should have. But every now and then, I'd hear whispers through old connections, mutual acquaintances, old classmates, people who still orbited the dying star that was my family. She said Daniel abandoned them when they needed him most. They lost everything, and he wouldn't even give them a loan. They treated him like royalty growing up, and this is how he pays them back. I didn't care about gossip. Not really. But it lingered, like smoke after a fire, the kind that clings to your clothes long after you've walked away from the flames. And then, one afternoon, Felix, my employee, came into my office holding a clipboard and looking a little pale. Hey, you got a minute? He asked, shutting the door behind him. Sure, I said, spinning in my chair to face him. He hesitated, then held out a printed form. I think this is a joke or something, but this came in through our contact page. I took it and scanned the top line. It was a service request form, one we usually used for business clients who wanted longer-term contracts. Name, Rachel Hawthorne. Company, Hawthorne Digital Solutions. Requested services, network installation, on-site security upgrade, cloud backup configuration. Estimated budget, $12,000. My heart skipped. Rachel? Opening a business? And using our form? I looked up at Felix, who was shifting awkwardly. You didn't reach out to her, right? No. I figured you should see it first. Good call. I reread the form 3 times, just to make sure it wasn't a mistake. But the phone number matched hers. The email was her name too, not even a burner. Bold, if nothing else. I sat back in my chair, letting the silence settle. So she was back in town. Or maybe she never left. And she was starting a business? Something about it felt off. Rachel wasn't the start-a-company type. She wasn't a builder. She was a siphon. She took. She maneuvered. She manipulated. But she didn't create. Unless, of course, someone else had created it for her. I spent the rest of the day looking into it. Public Business Registry? Yep, Hawthorne Digital Solutions was listed under her name, filed 2 months ago. No listed partners. No official office location. Just a mailing address linked to a co-working space downtown. I dug deeper. Her business had a website. Glossy, slick, way more polished than I expected. SEO optimized. A full about page that painted her as a digital strategist with 10 years of experience managing high-profile IT projects. I almost choked laughing. Her experience consisted of stealing passwords off sticky notes and blaming it on me. But the part that really got my attention? Her client list. Most of them were vague. Local marketing firms, healthcare consultants, retail technology systems. No names. Except for one. Midstate Logistics. That name I recognized. They were one of the bigger contracts I'd been pursuing for nearly a year. A regional shipping company that needed a full-scale IT overhaul. We'd had coffee, meetings, sample quotes. And then, radio silence. Now I knew why. They'd chosen her. That's when the switch flipped. Because this wasn't just Rachel being Rachel. This was Rachel stepping into my world. My turf. And I knew her. I knew she'd never been able to land a contract that size without someone else's help. And I knew exactly whose name she must have dropped to get it. Mine. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to myself. You just opened the wrong door, Rachel. Because I wasn't 17 anymore. And this time, I had leverage. The next day, I started planning. Step 1. Verify how she got the contract. I reached out to a contact I still had at Midstate, an old classmate named Eliana who worked in procurement. We weren't close, but we kept in touch here and there. I sent her a casual message. Hey, I saw Hawthorne Digital landed your IT contract. Just curious. I thought we were still in talks. Her reply came 15 minutes later. Hey Daniel. Yeah, honestly, I was surprised when your name didn't come up in the final quote. Rachel mentioned you two were still professionally linked, and that she'd be representing your branch. Thought it was a weird setup, but her quote came in lower. I stared at the screen. Professionally linked. She used my name. I felt the anger rise again, but I kept it in check. Thanks. That helps a lot. Just clearing up a miscommunication. Eliana replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Step 2. Gather receipts. I pulled all my past correspondence with Midstate. Quotes. Emails. Meeting notes. Timestamped PDFs showing my name and logo. All dated before Rachel even filed her business paperwork. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I went back through my parents' public financial records. It didn't take long to confirm what I suspected. After selling the house, they received a settlement from a lawsuit, something about workplace injury and a botched insurance payout. It wasn't a massive windfall, but it was enough to explain how Rachel suddenly had the money to fund a company. She'd used their money to start her business. The same money she had helped drain through years of lies and theft. It was too perfect. Step 3. Watch and wait. I didn't want to burn her immediately. That was the old me. The reactive kid who just wanted them to feel bad. This was different. This was surgical. I started building a portfolio. A dossier. Every fabricated credential on her website. I documented it. Every lie about her experience. I pulled metadata from LinkedIn screenshots. I even found an old resume she'd sent to a temp agency that contradicted the timeline she was currently selling. I also hired a virtual assistant to pose as a small business looking to work with Hawthorne Digital. She recorded the entire Zoom consultation. In it, Rachel mentioned me by name at least twice. Oh yes, I modeled our packages after some work I did with my associate Daniel. We've handled several high-end clients together. The kicker? She sent over my sample contract. The one I'd written. Word for word. I had everything I needed. And I was still just getting started. I waited exactly 3 weeks before I made my move. Not because I needed more time to prepare. I already had everything. The files. The audio clips. The fake consultation recording. The proof that Rachel had stolen my work, used my name, and defrauded a company into hiring her under completely false pretenses. No, I waited because revenge is best served cold, but also slow. It needed to simmer. And Rachel? She had no idea the pot was even on the stove. She kept growing bolder, too. Posting selfies on LinkedIn, acting like a corporate queen. Writing smug captions like, "Nothing like watching your hard work pay off." She even uploaded a video where she sat in a minimalist office, clearly rented, and gave advice on scaling your digital brand. I had to pause halfway through because I couldn't stop laughing. But the final straw came when she posted about expanding. Another contract. Another client. Another step toward legitimacy in a world she had no business being in. So I gave her the legitimacy she so desperately craved. It started with a package, sent directly to Midstate Logistics. Attention, Eliana Torres. Inside was a manila folder. No branding, no note, just proof. Proof that the resume Rachel had submitted was fabricated. Proof that her quote was plagiarized. Proof that she had never worked with me. In fact, quite the opposite. Transcripts of old voicemails she left me when she was desperate for money. Audio of her casually admitting to lying and stealing. And a signed affidavit from me, stating that I had no affiliation with her company, had never granted permission to use my name or materials, and had evidence of intellectual property theft. I didn't need to add commentary. The facts spoke for themselves. I sent a similar folder to 2 other companies listed on her website. One of them emailed me the same day. Short and to the point. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We will be conducting an internal review immediately. Please let us know if you are willing to speak further on this." I wasn't finished. I sent the final package to a small business watchdog group that ran a newsletter for local companies. They had a section titled Spotlight on Fraud, where they exposed dishonest vendors and companies for misleading claims, fake certifications, and deceptive practices. I made sure to include a USB with side-by-side screenshots of Rachel's website and mine, highlighting where she'd copied my layouts, word-for-word blurbs, and pricing structures. And then I waited. 1 week later, everything unraveled. I found out from a mutual connection, a guy who used to run SEO campaigns for us and had since moved on, that Rachel's name was being passed around in local tech circles. Not in a good way. One of her new clients had pulled out. Another had requested a refund and reported her to the Better Business Bureau. And Midstate? They didn't just cancel the contract. They blacklisted her. Publicly. They issued a statement to vendors warning about a consultant who misrepresented their credentials, falsified project experience, and engaged in deceptive contract practices. They didn't name her, but everyone knew. 2 days later, Hawthorne Digital Solutions' website was taken down. Her LinkedIn profile vanished. Her business email started bouncing. She was disappearing, or at least trying to. But I wasn't done yet. Because while Rachel's crash was satisfying, there were still 2 people who had spent nearly a decade believing her lies. People who threw me out, dismissed me, and came crawling back only when they needed help. I hadn't spoken to my parents since mailing that envelope, the one filled with proof that I'd been trying to warn them all along. I hadn't planned on contacting them again. But then I received an email. It was from my dad, sent to my work inbox, which wasn't publicly listed. Subject: "We understand now. Daniel, we've seen the news about Rachel. We received a letter from one of her clients with links to everything you sent. We didn't want to believe it. But it's all true, isn't it? We failed you. Not just once. Over and over. I don't even know how to ask for forgiveness. But if you ever want to talk, the door is open." Dad. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to my personal inbox, archived it, and marked the original unread. They didn't deserve closure. And they certainly didn't deserve me. But what they did deserve was a mirror. So I wrote back. Not to Dad, but to a small community newsletter in our hometown. The one that used to post wedding announcements, school achievements, and hometown success stories. I submitted an article under their Local Voices column. Not a tell-all, not a rant, just a story. The story of a young man falsely accused, cast out by his family, who started with nothing and built something meaningful, only to find that the same people who betrayed him were now reaching for his hand as they fell. I didn't use names. But the details were unmistakable. The story went viral locally. Comments poured in. People speculated. Some asked if it was real. A few even recognized the timeline and figured it out. I heard, through the grapevine, that my parents were mortified, that they stopped showing up to church, that they deleted their Facebook accounts, that their friends were quietly distancing themselves. All I had done was tell the truth. And the truth did what it always does. It burned away the lies. Rachel? She eventually resurfaced under a different name. Tried to start over in another city. I saw a press release months later where she was listed as Rachel H., consulting for a company in Oregon. But her reputation had holes in it now. Holes that didn't patch easily. As for me, I kept building. I hired 2 more employees. Expanded to another city. Invested in a co-working space for freelance tech workers. Built a mentorship program for young IT students who didn't have a support system. And I started living, really living, without constantly looking over my shoulder. One day, Felix asked me why I'd never spoken about my family. He wasn't being nosy, just curious. I smiled and told him the short version. They thought I stole from them, I said. Turns out, I was the one they couldn't afford to lose. He laughed, not realizing how true it was. And I realized, in that moment, that I was free. Not just from them, but from who I used to be. They had tried to bury me in lies. But I used every ounce of their dirt as the foundation for something better. And in the end, they were the ones who had to live with what they'd done. I just had to keep building. They cut me off when I had nothing, and came crawling back when I had everything. So I gave them the one thing they never gave me: silence.